To have debt or not to have debt? The million-dollar question. Should you pay off your home before retiring, or can you comfortably manage a mortgage in retirement? Let's jump in. Welcome back, Insiders. My name is Bill Smith, CEO and founder of W.A. Smith Financial Group. In this week's Ascend360 Insider, I'm going to weigh in on the pros and cons of retiring with a mortgage. And at the end, I'm going to share some of my thoughts and actionable strategies on how you can handle a mortgage in your retirement years. So why is this topic so important? Let's break this down. This was a recent report conducted by Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies, and they reported that 30 years ago, just 1 in every 4 homeowners in their late 60s to late 70s still had a mortgage, only 25%. Today, nearly half, 50%, in that same age range have a mortgage. The report also stated that once people hit 80, mortgages used to be extremely rare at only just 3%. But today, 1 in 4, or 25% of homeowners over the age of 80 still have a mortgage. So, why do more people have a mortgage today compared to the past? Well, according to Jennifer Malinsky, a senior research associate at Harvard's Housing Center, stated that, number one, the 1986 Tax Reform Act made mortgages a much more attractive form of debt by eliminating tax deductions for interest on credit cards and other consumer debt, while keeping the mortgage interest deduction intact. Number two, Americans today seem to have less aversion to debt than previous generations. Total consumer debt levels as a percentage of their disposable income are significantly higher today than they were in the 1990s. So what are the pros of retiring with a mortgage? Well, let's break this down. Number one, liquidity and investment opportunity. So when you think about it, if you put your money into your house and you pay off your house, that's great. But what is that doing for you other than freeing up your cash flow? Could those dollars been better invested? Investing. So when you look at it, there's a couple of ways to frame it, but retaining a mortgage can preserve liquidity, allowing retirees to invest their cash in higher yielding assets. Maybe tax benefits. Maybe carrying a mortgage into retirement could provide tax benefits, such as the ability to deduct some interest payments from your taxable income. This can be particularly beneficial if you're in a higher tax bracket. Talk to your tax advisor or build it into a tax plan. Next is an inflation hedge. So when you look at it, a fixed rate mortgage can act as a hedge against inflation, as that mortgage payments remain the same or constant while the value of money decreases over time. So you can also think of it from the perspective of overall just having more money available in your life now today. So what are the cons? When you break this down, like what are the negatives in retiring with a mortgage? Well, financial security and peace of mind, biggie, right? I know the mortgage just bugs you. Depending on the generation, depending on the interest rate. This is another big one, right? Interest rates have changed drastically, which can have an impact. But the mere thought of having debt probably drives some of you crazy. The psychological and financial stress that goes along with that as you think about going into retirement probably has beads of sweat piling up on your forehead as I speak. Well, when we look at the impact of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 on the mortgage interest deductibility, that act mitigated the deductibility advantage to a certain extent. Taxpayers now can only deduct interest on up to $750,000 of qualified resident mortgage, down from $1 million where it was before. The act also suspended the deduction for interest paid on home equity loans and lines of credit unless they are used to buy, build, or substantially improve the home securing that financing. Fixed monthly expenses, it's another big burden when you think about it from an income perspective. So the burden of a monthly payment is having a big impact, or as a percentage of your need in retirement, usually a mortgage payment is a very big expense. Retirement is all about cash flow. More to follow on that in a minute. Well, let's talk about opportunity cost. Think about it. This is a negative. You're putting money into a house. What are you missing out on? The opportunity cost of paying a mortgage interest versus investing that money in an opportunity somewhere else that could generate much more opportunity or income or growth for you and your family. Strategies for managing a mortgage in retirement, considering paying off a mortgage or interest rates are low versus maybe when they're high. I mean, these are things you weigh and you think about. If you have a low mortgage interest rate, it may make more sense to just keep it, potentially invest the difference. You got a higher interest rate, maybe you pay it off, however you want to look at it, but you want to use the mortgage for investment, flexibility, and liquidity, bottom line. So when you keep the mortgage, it can preserve more cash. Paying off the mortgage frees up cash flow. So the key here is having a comprehensive plan. You need to look at all of these aspects, leveraging mortgage interest tax deductions, looking at cash flow, looking at your available money that you have to be able to put towards this debt. All crucially important options. And one I can't miss and need to talk about is, what about refinancing to a lower interest rate? Is that possible? May not be now, but could it be in the future? And really tying that tax benefit or the mortgage interest deductibility into that strategy. Avoid depleting your investment accounts to pay off the mortgage. So that's a fine line. We have to be careful. Some people say, oh yeah, I'm going to pay off this mortgage. I'm going to take money out of things that are making great interest or growth, and now I'm going to put it over here and pay off this mortgage so that you can free up your cash flow. Does that make sense? The answer? It just depends. It depends on whether or not you're retired. And the bottom line is, in my opinion, not really driven by interest rates. See, we work with and advise people who want to retire. Retirement is about cash flow. Retirement is about having the ability to be able to pay off the mortgage so that you can free up cash flow. Cash flow is the most important part. So when we look at it, and the way you should look at this, if you're within 5 to 10 years of retirement, or maybe you are already retired, you want to frame it up as a percentage. In other words, what percentage is the payment of the principal that's left on the mortgage? If it's anything greater than what you can get on a guaranteed basis from an investment, the answer is pay it off. But get a plan. That's the key. Got to have a plan, get advice, talk through what's important to you. And that's it for this week's Ascend360 Insider. Do you have any specific questions or topics you'd like to cover? Leave a comment in the comment section below and let me know. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Bill Smith, and I'll see you next week.